Hello, this is Mrs. Meyer, and I'm going to be going over the APIS Honors Biology course description for students and parents. On the left-hand side, you can see the course objectives. These are the things that the students will be learning throughout the year, different scientific skills such as observation, applying scientific knowledge, scientific narrative writing, working in cooperative groups, and so on. In general, though, for the course itself, we're going to look under the course description here. So I firmly believe that each student is unique and learns skills at different speeds. So I've designed the Honors Biology class to guide students through a progression of learning that eventually will result in mastering the course standards without penalizing students for the source or pace of their learning. So in other words, students will get multiple chances at showing that they've learned something, and just because some students learn faster than others doesn't mean that those students that learn more slowly are going to get penalized for that or have a lower grade because of that. The course content itself comes from the Next Generation Science Standards, which are science standards that are commonly used in schools in the United States. Some sample topics that we'll be covering are ecosystems, inheritance, evolution, among many others. Lots of times the content for the course will be from your textbook or perhaps a video that I've created or a video that I want you to watch that someone else has created, a website, or even an iBook. So there are different ways at learning the material, and sometimes students will have a choice into how they're going to learn that material. The course supplies are listed down here below. A composition notebook is a notebook that is bound at the end without the spirals on it. Instead, it has kind of a fabric binding on it so that the pieces don't fall out. And it should be quad ruled or have graph paper on it. I'll give students an example of this in class. I think the other materials are pretty much self-explanatory. Students should bring those to class with them. And then finally, the school textbook will be provided in class. In general, students will be working both in teams and individually throughout the year in this course. Our focus, as far as the science practices go, is going to be on asking scientific questions throughout the course and defending a scientific argument. So we're going to use a process quite often called claim evidence reasoning, which you can see described here, and I'll be talking about quite a bit in class with the students. That composition notebook that I discussed earlier is going to be the students' research notebook, so they'll be recording most of their learning in that, but I also use technology a lot, so it's important that that laptop or tablet be brought to class every day so that students can keep up with their work. There will be homework assigned in this classroom, typically for understanding content through a video or through reading the textbook, or for review. As a teacher, my goal is to make sure the students are given multiple days to work on assignments, so very rarely would I give an assignment one day and expect it to be due the next. You have many days to work on assignments, and I'll be very clear about the due dates for assignments. Homework does not count toward the class grade, but it is expected to be completed. And I'll talk later about how I'm going to make sure that that homework is completed for this class. Page 2 goes on to talk about assessment in the biology class. The two different categories where students will be showing their learning are the content standards, which make up 80% of the grade, and then the process standards, which make up 20% of the grade. For each semester, semesters 1 and 2, there's also a final exam. Each of those count for 10% of the course grade outside of those standards. So the content standards, these are the ones that are the pieces of information about the science knowledge that a student has. So students will either be proficient or exceeds for all learning targets, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute. And the summative assessments, which we'll be giving throughout the class, which can include many different types of assessments from quizzes to tests to projects, will all be used to see what students understand about the content of the class. The second standard is the process standards, and these are science skills. So the particular skills I'll be looking at throughout the year are what's called scientific modeling, and then also scientific argumentation. There are separate rubrics that go with these that I'll be working through with the students, and typically I'll be assessing these types of standards in investigations and lab reports. If students have missing work, instead of being marked as a 0 in the gradebook, they will be marked as incomplete. So an incomplete means that the student still has to finish that assignment, but it's currently not giving them a 0% because that student is still learning the information. I will not let incompletes sit in the gradebook for very long, however. If I see an incomplete pop up for a student, I will request after school class time or time during the day where the student can come in and work on that assignment with me. We don't want assignments to build up throughout this semester that are missing, because if a student ends the semester with one or more incomplete summative assessments, they will receive no credit for the course. This is an APIS policy. So before we get to the assessment levels, I'd like to look at, in general, what these different levels of grading mean. So earlier in the content standards, I said that students are expected to obtain a proficient or exceeds for course content learning targets. So proficient means that the student work is completed to a level that exhibits in-depth understanding. This is like B-level work. Okay, students understand the concept as I've wanted them or as I've taught them, and they can show me that they understand it through their summative work. Exemplary here, or exceeds at the top, is that a student has become an expert in the concept and could even teach others. They're able to connect their personal experiences and questions to that content. Usually it's going to be student projects that show this exceeding work or this exemplary work. There are other standards as well, levels of grading such as emerging and approaching. So the student is just lacking that understanding, can't show us that he or she understands much, if any, of the content standard, which is fine. That's where many students will begin in their understanding of the content, but expect that they begin to progress as they get taught more. So next step up, they will be at the approaching level, where they show understanding of the concepts at the level that they can basically give me a definition of something, or they can reproduce a diagram that I've given them. So this would be like C-level work. In order to become proficient, though, again, remember, students have to have an in-depth understanding. So how will I see the difference between a student having an approaching understanding, a proficient understanding, and an exemplary understanding? Here are the ways that students are assessed now, and these assessment levels, to see what level of understanding they have. So for that level 1 or emerging understanding, this is just going to be those pre-assessments. So an assessment that I give students before they learn anything in class. It is not recorded in the gradebook. It's solely used for me to help understand what the students know and what they don't know, to help guide instruction. The next level is those level 2 assessments. So these show basic level understanding. Again, these will be assessments that have matching or fill in the blank or definition recall. This is going to show up as C-level work in the gradebook, but if level 3 assessment is later recorded, that will go away. So it's showing the students moving up the levels of assessment. So the next type of assessment the student would take is a level 3 assessment. These are higher order application of the content, typically short answer questions or interpreting diagrams. Again, once that assessment shows that the student can do B-level work at that standard, then that gets recorded in the gradebook. And then finally, level 4 assessments. These are student-inspired projects that connect their unique student questions and experiences to the content. This would be A-level work, and again, this would cover up that level 3 assessment. So what you'll often see in the gradebook is at the beginning of the unit, many students will start with a C because we've only done the level 2 assessment and they're doing C-level work. And then as we move to do the level 2 or level 3 assessments, then students will move to B-level in the gradebook. And then finally, when they do the end of unit projects, students will start having those A's show up in the gradebook. So do not be alarmed if at the beginning of the quarter your child has a C in class. That just means that the only assessment that we've done so far is that level 2 assessment, and that we're working forward towards the higher up level 3 and level 4 assessments that will show up as B's and A's in the gradebook. There are also chances to redo and retake assessments in this class. You can read about the level 2, level 3, and level 4 assessments and how retakes and redos work on those down below. But the kind of major ideas that I want to make sure you understand is that summative assessments, again, need to be retaken or redone until you reach the proficient level. So I expect all students to at least have a B in class, because that would be the proficient level. And then no redos or retakes may be taken place during the last 2 weeks of the semester. This is an APIS policy. So we're not going to be waiting to the last minute to do redos and retakes. There are time limits as to when they can be taken. So students need to be responsible to get those retakes and redos scheduled with the teacher so that that can happen in a timely manner. And students are also expected to do some extra work in order to take their redo or their retake. So the big message in all of this is it's better for a student to do well on an assessment the first time so they don't have to go through all the extra work of doing a redo or retake later. However, I still want to provide this opportunity so that students continue to grow and continue to learn. The third page of the syllabus starts with my course expectations. This is about behaviors in the classroom. During the first week of school, the students and I will be working together to outline which behaviors are acceptable and unacceptable in the classroom. But there are certain behaviors in the APIS student handbook that students are expected to understand, and I will be following the consequences for those different behaviors. So I encourage you and your student to read through that behavior plan in the handbook so you know what's going to be happening. At the bottom of page 3, I have some information on communication, how you can expect to hear from me about your child and how he or she is doing in class. If a student needs to come in and work with me outside of the classroom, I will definitely contact you about that. But you can also expect weekly email updates from me. You can have access to the Edmodo online course if you would like that from me. There is access to my plan book that's linked through Edmodo. You, of course, can get onto the online gradebook PowerSchool, and you could sign up for these Remind text messages. Remind is a service that allows students and I to send messages to each other without having each other's cell phone numbers. So if you want to sign up for those Remind text messages, you can follow that information on the right-hand side, and you will be entered into the Honors Biology Remind class list. Some miscellaneous items down here at the bottom. Extra credit assignments are not available in this class. Students have to comply with the APIS Student Computer Internet Use Rules. Never be afraid to come to me for extra help. This is one of my favorite things to do, is to work with students one-on-one to help them understand concepts more deeply. So as long as a student comes to me and asks for an appointment, I am more than willing to work outside of the class time and outside of school time to help that student learn and understand better. There's a little note to parents and guardians right here, and then down here at the bottom, some of my contact information. If you send me an email, you can expect an email reply from me at the minimum of 24 hours later during the school week. I'm looking forward to working with all of your children and to meeting some of you throughout the school year.